Think about the oldest stories you've ever heard, myths, legends, and ancient teachings that seem almost too poetic to be real. These weren't just bedtime tales for villagers sitting around a fire. They were coded messages, wisdom wrapped in metaphor, designed to survive centuries of distortion. Ancient teachers didn't just tell people what to believe, they showed them how to see. And that's the part that religion, over the ages, learned to hide. In every civilization, there were people whose role was to pass on the deep knowledge of life, how the mind shapes reality, how thought and intention mold the world around you. From Egypt's temple scribes to Greece's philosophers, from India's rishis to the mystics of the Middle East, there was a common thread. You are more than flesh and bone. You are a living, breathing connection between the seen and the unseen. But here's the problem. The more people understood their own power, the less they could be controlled. So over time, institutions, often under the banner of religion, decided that this kind of knowledge was too dangerous for the masses. The stories remained, but their meanings were blurred, sometimes even reversed. Take the idea of heaven. Ancient teachers often described it not as a place you go after death, but as a state of consciousness you can enter now. They said heaven is the harmony between your inner and outer worlds, a kind of alignment that changes how you experience life. But slowly, the narrative shifted. Heaven became a distant reward, accessible only after a lifetime of obedience. The immediate, empowering part was gone. Or look at the concept of sin. In its original sense, from ancient languages, sin simply meant to miss the mark, like an archer aiming for a target and falling short. It wasn't about eternal punishment. It was a reminder to adjust your aim, to realign with truth. But fear is a more effective control tool than gentle correction, so sin was reframed as something to dread rather than something to learn from. This isn't about attacking religion. It's about peeling back the layers to see what's underneath. Ancient teachers didn't want blind followers. They wanted awake students. They wanted people to test ideas in their own lives, to see the results for themselves. Their greatest lessons weren't meant to be memorized. They were meant to be lived. Imagine if you were taught from a young age that your thoughts are like seeds, and that your inner dialogue is planting a garden in your reality every single day. You'd probably pay more attention to what you say to yourself. You'd notice the way certain beliefs make your world bigger or smaller. That's exactly the kind of awareness ancient teachers were aiming for, a day-by-day mastery of your own mind and heart. They used symbols because symbols bypass the surface mind and speak directly to the deeper self. A lotus flower wasn't just a plant. It was a picture of how something beautiful can rise from the mud. A pyramid wasn't just a tomb. It was a reminder of stability and the layers of the self, from the base of survival to the point of spiritual illumination. When you start to see these old symbols through ancient eyes, the world becomes richer. You realize the stories you thought you knew are holding keys you never turned. And maybe you begin to ask, if this was hidden, what else might I have missed? The most dangerous thing you can give a person isn't money or weapons. It's the understanding that they already hold the blueprint for their own freedom. That's what the ancient teachers knew. And that's why their deepest lessons had to be disguised, diluted, or erased. Subscribe for more wisdom they never wanted you to know. Now, let's go deeper. If you strip away the layers of fear, control, and ritual that built up over centuries, you start to find something surprisingly simple at the heart of ancient teachings: direct experience. The elders, mystics, and philosophers of the past didn't ask people to memorize endless rules. They asked them to look, really look, at the nature of their own minds and the patterns in the world around them. They understood that everything we experience on the outside is a mirror of what's happening inside. This wasn't poetic fluff for them. It was a living science. They observed how anger, fear, and resentment seemed to ripple outward into conflicts, while gratitude, clarity, and compassion drew opportunities and harmony. They didn't have MRI scans or quantum physics papers, but they didn't need them. They could see the evidence in daily life. Think of the mind as a kind of lens. A dirty lens makes everything look distorted. A clean lens shows things as they are. Ancient teachers spent their lives learning how to clean that lens through meditation, self-inquiry, discipline of thought, and a balanced way of living. They taught that your reality is less about what's in front of you and more about how you are looking at it. One of the most misunderstood ideas they left behind is the notion of divinity within. In their view, divinity wasn't a distant ruler sitting on a cloud. It was the spark inside you, the part of you that is eternal and untouchable. This wasn't meant to make you arrogant. It was meant to make you responsible. Because if the divine is within you, then so is the power to create, to heal, and to destroy. And that's where the tension with organized religion came in. Institutions could guide you, but they couldn't hold ultimate authority if you realized you already had a direct line to the infinite. The moment you understood that you didn't need an intermediary to touch the sacred, the hierarchy crumbled. So, instead of encouraging people to explore their inner temple, the focus shifted to outer rituals, obedience, and dependence. But the old wisdom is still there, hidden in plain sight. You can find it in proverbs, in parables, in the little sayings that everyone knows but few understand. As above, so below. A simple line that carries the entire philosophy of correspondence, that the patterns in the heavens match the patterns in our minds, and vice versa. Or, the kingdom of God is within you. A sentence that doesn't point to any church or location, but straight into your own consciousness. It's ironic. The same institutions that tried to guard this knowledge have, in their scriptures and traditions, accidentally preserved it for those with eyes to see. It's like a hidden layer in a painting, invisible at first glance, but suddenly clear once you know where to look. The ancient teachers didn't believe you could be given enlightenment like a prize. They believed you could only awaken it within yourself through practice and awareness. They would give you the map, yes, but they knew you had to walk the path. And they warned that the journey would be uncomfortable, even painful at times, because it would strip away everything false you've been taught about yourself. So here's the question. What happens when you start living like those ancient teachers did? When you measure your life, not by how well you follow rules, but by how deeply you embody truth. When you stop looking for salvation in the distance and start cultivating it inside you, moment by moment. This isn't about turning your back on traditions. It's about reclaiming the parts that were meant to set you free, not keep you in line. The old masters didn't want worshippers. They wanted co-creators. They didn't want you to bow. They wanted you to stand tall, awake, and aware. And maybe, just maybe, that's the very thing that has been missing from your life without you even realizing it. When you begin to approach life with this ancient perspective, something remarkable happens. The world starts speaking to you in ways you've never noticed before. A passing comment from a stranger suddenly feels like an answer to a question you hadn't voiced. A series of small coincidences, what the mystics called synchronicities, begin to guide your steps. This isn't magic in the fairy tale sense. It's the natural byproduct of becoming more attuned to the invisible threads connecting all things. The old teachers understood that reality is layered. On the surface, you have the visible, the events, the people, the material objects. Beneath that is the realm of patterns, meaning, and energy. Go deeper still, and you arrive at the source, the still point from which everything arises. They taught that if you could align yourself with that source, life would no longer feel random. You'd see the order hidden inside the chaos. That's why so many of their teachings were about silence, stillness, and observation. They knew that in the constant noise of daily life, the signal from the source is drowned out. Quieting the mind wasn't about escape. It was about tuning your awareness so finely that you could pick up on those subtle signals again. But here's where the real challenge lies. It's one thing to understand these ideas intellectually, it's another to live them. Knowing that your thoughts shape your reality is easy to say, but can you remain calm when someone insults you? Can you stay focused on gratitude when things fall apart? Ancient teachers measured spiritual maturity not by how much you knew, but by how you responded when life tested you. They used trials as classrooms. Every difficulty was an opportunity to practice alignment, to see if your inner state could remain steady while the outer world shifted. In their eyes, mastery wasn't about controlling life. It was about mastering yourself so completely that no matter what happened, you could move with clarity, compassion, and purpose. This is why they often spoke in parables and stories rather than direct commands. They wanted the listener to wrestle with the meaning, to find their own understanding through reflection. They knew that wisdom discovered personally is far more powerful than wisdom handed down without effort. Over time, as these teachings were filtered through layers of interpretation, much of this personal responsibility was replaced by passive belief. People were told what to think instead of being guided to discover how to think. The result? A population disconnected from its own inner compass, reliant on external authority to define truth. But here's the thing, the map is still there. You don't need to invent it from scratch. It's hidden in the architecture of sacred sites, in the rhythm of ancient chants, in the geometry of symbols carved thousands of years ago. It's embedded in proverbs passed down through generations, waiting for someone to see past the surface and into the pattern beneath. When you reclaim this way of seeing, you stop moving through life as a passive observer. You start to recognize yourself as a participant in the unfolding of reality. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this here to teach me?" That one shift in perspective changes everything. And maybe that's what the ancient teachers feared would be lost. Not the rituals, not the names, but the living connection between human beings and the source of all things. When that connection is alive, you don't need fear to guide you, because you're guided by understanding. You don't need promises of reward or threats of punishment, because you're already aligned with the deeper law of life. So if you've ever felt like something essential has been hidden from you, maybe it has, but it was never fully erased. It's still here, waiting for you to remember, just as it waited for every seeker before you. What do you think the greatest truth those ancient teachers were trying to protect really was?